Well, it took me a few tries to get my stream up live, but I finally did. It's pretty early in the morning. Today, the hotel is going to have an electrical outage and a water outage. So that's a real trigger for me because that reminds me of Houston. And what they did to the electricity was they made it so they could control uh, your recharging and they knew what you plugged in. But anyway, I'm going to do what I can today. I'm getting up early before the electricity goes out and the water goes out too. As I said, I had some trouble with my check in reservation, but it was resolved, and the manager gave me a very nice located room. But this is the first hotel I've ever stayed in that has no refrigerator in the room. The hotel manager says that I could pay $5 a day for a refrigerator, no refrigerator or microwave. And yesterday the cable television stopped working. So a lot of compromises when you're living like this. And then this morning gave me a room with a suite, an adjoining door suite. And this morning I woke up to the smell of somebody smoking drugs next door. So I don't know if it's crack. I know that when my rescue from Houston came, the person identified that smell in my room as crack. So I don't know if that's what it was, but whatever it was directly in my room. Since my escape from the FEMA camp in Houston, I have done a lot of recovering from the trauma. And the thing about it is my recovering has mostly been forgetting, forgetting what I've been through. But now, that I'm looking for permanent housing and dealing with the sabotage that was done to me in Phoenix and the torture in Texas. Now that I'm dealing with that and I'm actually talking to all the European women who are the real estate agents, reminding me of Patty Koch. It's reminding me of how they increased my rent so much until I couldn't afford to pay it. It reminds me of all of that. And the realtors I've talked to have pretty much let me know that they're giving rent increases of 8% a year, and that people that are living there have had to change apartments to scale down and down and down and down and down. And the hotel rates consistently rise. So here you have a population of Americans living on essentially fixed incomes with real estate agencies that are working together to create policies that make it impossible to afford to live anywhere. And then you have to be humiliated by the European women in the real estate offices who are going to go through your credit and show you the units they want you to have, which could be designated for you, like it was in Phoenix. They'd give you and it's just so depressing. And I'm feeling really shut out of the American dream. I'm feeling really shut out of life itself, if you want to know the truth. So I decided that there's no point in stopping my social media global influencer career to try to appease the Europeans so they'll let me live somewhere, because I couldn't erase my footprint. I've done far too much work. I can't access my Silver Rain Runningcloud Facebook account to erase that. I can't erase when the Arizona State Troopers kidnapped me. I can't erase any of that. And I was thinking, well, now they're going to know where you are. It's going to make it easier for them to come after you again. But you want to know what, people? I'm running out of rope. So it really doesn't make a difference in so many ways, because I can't control what's happening. So what I'm going to talk about today is how I did everything in my power to be sure I wouldn't end up this way. My conversation today is going to be about how I went to college, went to the right college, put myself through. It's going to be about how I found training to become a computer programmer and how ATT in Illinois and how the immigration offices made sure that the minorities that were going to be hired would be the East Indians, and that you end up suddenly with an East Indian boss. And my opportunities were cut short in computers. I wasn't able to become a computer game designer or to participate in talking computer systems. And those were my goals, but I was shut out. I'm going to talk about how at Illinois Bell, I studied corporate law and learned to do all of the jobs that a corporate lawyer does, but how Sheldon Epstein decided that he wasn't going to ever have me as his boss. And so he created a patent company and made an EEOC complaint in my name so that I couldn't get hired. It was hard for me to get hired. But I finally overcame. It took me 2 years of living on charity to get to a position where the blacklisting against me in Chicago ended, caused by Sheldon L. Epstein. So from the very beginning of my life, of my building my economic future, I was sabotaged by the Europeans every step of the way. It's so depressing to me because I did everything that a person needed to do to not end up this way, to not end up oppressed by a real estate industry that's working with finance, that's working with the secret societies that do the surveillance. They're working with everybody to be sure that I don't have a place to live. If all I'm living on is Social Security and every single rent is 100% over my Social Security, how am I supposed to survive? And the hotels, well, a lot of people tried moving into the hotels and living in hotels as transients. But what did they do with that? Well, they created laws to limit how long you could stay. They created chains and franchises. They created associations that would continue to create a unified front against the people to control the rents. A unified front to control the cost of a room. So here I am. I got a nice room. Look at that view. Isn't that an incredible view? You've got to admit it's beautiful. But when I try to find a place to live I can afford, 700 credit rating through the of rent, through the refusal to renew my lease because I complained to the police about the gang stalking, because of the way Arrowhead Honda stole my car and gave me a salvage vehicle and then repossessed it. I had to let them repossess it. I was paying for a 2020 Honda, $520 a month for a 2020 Honda. And then Geico Insurance treats me like a criminal because they're all in cahoots with it. And then they sell that vehicle as a used car, and CarMax reports none of the damage on it. And that's not even talking about the way the Europeans have used the police to attack me and break my back. And now I've got a lump in my breast. My teeth are broken. I need medical care. And here's the problem. I did everything right. I married a college student, an heir to a fortune in Chicago. I helped him through medical school, wrote his applications for him. Well, I didn't write them. I just typed them and edited his essay. And that marriage went wrong. I had 2 children. I'm going to talk about my children. I haven't shared the success of my children because I was an amazing mother. So both of my children have achieved a lot. And I have not made it obvious that I'm their mother because I did not want the Europeans to stop them as a way to punish me. But now my children are close to 40 and they are pretty secure. They have their own reputations and they seem to be surrounded by Europeans that are different from the ones that surrounded me and that are different from the ones that come after me. And we all know how much the white hats are bragging about their success getting rid of the swamp in DC. We all know that Kamala Harris is really representing herself as a friend to Americans, all Americans, including Americans that are Black and Black Indians like me. So there's a different kind of future here. So I'm also going to talk a little about my children so that you can see that I did everything right. I did not become an alcoholic. I did not become a drug addict. I did not sit around all day watching TV or playing tennis or playing golf. I worked on being a mother, on being a responsible person. I worked every day. But I was locked out of law. Then I was blocked out of computer science. Then I was blocked out of academia by what they did to me. Henry Louis Gates is still on TV, creating a huge mythology to continue the myth and lie of slavery and how prevalent slavery was in America. It was no more prevalent than it is today. And that's a tricky thing I just said, because a lot of people in America of all races don't realize how much they're enslaved. But when you hear about my life and how I've been locked out of the money and locked out of the power, you will begin to understand how deep and serious the conspiracy is and how much it's based on who is an indigenous person and who ain't. So I just wanted to get on very quick this morning before the power goes out. And now I'm going to go out and get dressed for the day because there won't be any air conditioning and it might reach 100 again today. So I want to be sure that I am not in the room burning up. So I'm going to, do some other things today. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to talk about how I did not do anything to be in the state that I'm in. The last thing that I want to mention that's critically important is in 1990, I read the work of Gerald James, an economist at Yale University, and one of my professors and the chairman of the program that I got my master's at Yale in. I got my master's at Yale from the program when Gerald James was the chairman. And in his class, we read his book. And in his book, he informed us that based on his scholarship, he was aware that most Americans cannot survive on a salary, that most Americans survive because of their inheritance. It's the accumulation of wealth over generations that let a person have a good life. So I knew back in 1990 how important it would be for me to have an inheritance, because no matter how much I worked, I would never be able to replace the boost an inheritance would give me. So I was all set to not own a home until my parents died, or my grandparents died, and I had an inheritance. And my grandfather's inheritance to me did make a big difference. It let me take my children on a month-long vacation. It let me pay tuition for my son so he could go to college, get a start. Not all of college, but what my grandfather left me a lot. But my grandfather had something to leave because he passed for European, working for the railroad most of his life. He put in 45, 50 years at the railroad, and they did not know he was indigenous American. They did not know that. And when they found that out, they made sure to disgrace and terminate him. But he was already at entire retirement age. They just made him retire right on time and in disgrace for drinking on the job. Yeah, like those guys on the train from Sacramento, from Stockton to the Sierra Leone aren't drinking. Well, now they're probably doing all kinds of things, oxycodone, alcohol. So my grandfather was just a part of the culture that was there. But when they found out he was black and Indian, they really made sure that he wouldn't have any more. But he left me a house, but I had to share it with my sister. And she's a very foolish girl. We don't have the same father. So we don't have the same genetic imprint. I am so tired of trying to survive. I did everything right. I'm not being arrogant when I say I did everything right. I'm not being arrogant. I'm not being egotistical. I'm not being prideful. I went to college. I put myself through. I graduated. I went to Northwestern University when it was a top 10 university. I worked for Brunswick Corporation, studying corporate law every single summer. Every single summer. And Sheldon left me with no recommendations and in disgrace through the EEOC complaint. That leaves you blacklisted. I learned that at Inroads, and I was in Inroads, so I never would have made the mistake of reporting to the EEOC. I would have known that that was a government trap, a part of a conspiracy to identify people most likely to fight for their rights and privileges and justice. And then I got an inheritance from my mother. I remember when I told my mother, I said, well, Mom, I don't see how I can build a future at all now because they've got me mentally ill. I'm considered unemployable by the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut sent me a letter that said I'm unemployable. So I don't see how I'm going to survive, Mom. I don't see how I'm going to survive my old age. And my mother patted my arm because we were walking together arm in arm to her 6901 Oglesby in Chicago, her place. And she said, baby, you don't have to worry about that. I have so much money. You're going to be fine. Money's not going to be a problem. So my mother told me that. She told me that when I went to visit her for her 70th birthday. She told me I wouldn't have anything to worry about in terms of an inheritance. And my ex-husband was doing such a good job of taking care of me and providing shelter for me until the Argentinian Jew, Juan Luis Hernandez, came and forced his way into my home and made it so I had to flee to save my life because he was violent and committing crimes against me, violent crimes against my body. And he wasn't going to leave me alone. He was a psychopath. And when I told his parents, retired Yale professors in the Department of Medicine and Spanish, and when I told his brother Diego, a DA in Westchester County, New York, and I said, Juan Luis drove me out of Woodbridge. Juan Luis is a psychopath. You should do something because he's preying on the women in the community. And Diego threatened me with violence and had a detective call me and say that he was going to hurt me. And didn't they hurt me? Didn't the Arizona State Troopers come hurt me? Yeah, they broke my back. They made me cripple. They kidnapped me. But none of it would have happened if my own brother, Andre Martin Tipetti, former Illinois state rep, had not robbed me of the inheritance that my mother promised me and that my stepfather promised me. I'm a multi-millionaire, and if I'd had that money for 10 years, I might possibly have followed the investment plans of Boyce Watkins, and I might possibly be on my way to a trillionaire by now, a billionaire by now, because I would have done the right things. I would have invested and made my money grow. I would have fixed my town in Oklahoma, the town that Bo's debt created. Lima. I would have fought the courts that Judge Butner had. I would have fought the probates that stole my land in Oklahoma that my grandfather left me. I would have had the power to do something. So Andre robbed me. He robbed me of my last chance at power to fight what's coming. So now here I am, in beautiful Palm Springs with all of the victimization that I have experienced. And although I did everything right, the Europeans made sure that I would end up with nothing and that they would have everything. Well, I don't see how I can even have a life. My next step is what? Homelessness? Because the rates at these motels are greater than the money that I bring. And they're rising and rising and rising. So that's going to be pretty much what I talk about in more detail. And I'm going to talk about the great success of my children. And that's pretty much going to be my agenda for this next part of my series, The Story of Silver Rain Running Cloud. Thank you for joining me.